and welcome to the show, Trevor.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I've been doing good, as good as you can be in life. Life's up and down, but doing good.
Good. For the viewers and listeners who don't know, Trevor and I did two films when you were much younger, and I directed you, and you're fantastic.
Thank you so much. I remember those days. That was a while ago now, and
Yeah,
it's crazy to look back on that. I'm sure it's crazy for you to see me like change like that too. It's
it's
probably
it's such a bizarre experience because I know when I was a kid, people would say that to me as an adult, like once I grew up, like, oh my God, it's so crazy to see you all grown up. And I never really got it until I directed those films. And now all of you of my little babies are like full adults and doing things.
right. It's crazy. It's insane.
It's so weird. But I love it. And I love watching all of you just explore and find your voice and become these amazing creators and people and humans and adults. It's weird, but I love it.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely a crazy thing, but it's a good thing. It's a good thing. I'm sure it's nostalgic for you to look at that, and it's it's crazy.
It
That's
is.
all it is.
It is. It's crazy. Well, the first thing I always love to ask everyone on my show is kind of an interesting question for somebody like you and me who grew up in this industry. But I love to know what made you want to be an actor.
So my like getting into acting story is pretty, it's different than a lot of people because when I was super young, it wasn't like a thing that I was like, hey, I really want to be an actor. Like it'd be so cool to be like on screen and see myself and be like famous or like whatever, right?
Mhm.
Like it was never like that for me. What actually happened was my dad retired early from Chevron Oil when he was about 45, so he retired pretty young. And my mom and I had me when they were a little bit older in life, and I was a young kid, so I was a lot for them to handle. I was, bouncing off the walls and stuff, doing young kid things. So I was about 5 or 6 years old, and one of my mom's best friend actually worked for an agency. So her name was Kathy Keeley. She worked for a Jana Luker agency, who was my first agent, and she pitched the idea to my mom. She was like, "Hey, Trevor has red hair. He wants to do like play baseball. He wants to go do all these things. Why don't you just like have your husband take him to like some auditions for fun? Like it's not like something like, oh, you're gonna go to these auditions. You're gonna. I was like, sure, let's do it. I want to do something, you know. So that's kind of how I got into it. So I booked my first job. It was a Wiener Schnitzel hot dog commercial. I don't know if you are you
Oh
familiar with
my
that?
Lord, yes.
It was a pretty funny thing. So I was like just a little kid, and I was like, it wasn't a huge like thing, but I was just there, and like some guy was for the chili cheese fries. That's what it was for. So I was a young kid, and I thought it was so cool. I thought it was the coolest thing because I was like, "Hey, I'm here. I get to be in this." And the it was filmed at a Wiener Schnitzel, and I liked Wiener Schnitzel at the time. And I was like, they gave me free food. I was like, I'm living the life. I'm
Yeah.
6 years old. I'm freaking eating, doing whatever I want, getting filmed. I was like, this is sick. And I mean, if that was like all acting was for me, that would have been fine. Like I never had any expectations of doing like films or TV, anything like that, or seeing myself ever. Is like that's kind of how I got into it. So it's kind of a different story than a
Yeah.
lot of people.
But I love that. I mean, I think when you get into the industry as a child, it's interesting because it's like you don't really know what they mean when they say like auditions or like acting class. You're like, what is all of that? And then you start doing it and you're like, oh wait, this is really fun.
Exactly. It's like, oh, okay, I'm going to acting class, like whatever that is.
I love that so much. So were you guys, you weren't in California yet when you did that, right?
No, I was born in Los Angeles.
California. Oh wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I was born in West LA at the Cedar Sinai Hospital,
Oh
and
wow.
yeah, I lived there till I was about 6 years old, and then, funny enough, I have another story about how I got into it. So, in 2008, so I was four. That's when the market crashed. My family had they purchased a bunch of property in like Bakersfield, California. I don't know if you know where that is, but it's
Yeah.
about an hour and a half north of LA, and we decided to move up there. And as soon as we moved up there is when I started booking stuff. So we'd have to drive down every day, audition, audition, audition. It'd be like crazy.
That's wild. That is a
Yeah.
crazy drive. I remember I had a friend growing up who was in the industry too, and she lived in like, I think it was like Apple Valley. And so she
Okay.
was doing the same thing. It was like her and her mom were just on the road constantly.
Yeah. It's a grind. It's definitely a grind, especially if you're making the commute to LA, like Santa Monica,
Yeah.
rush hour traffic for an audition. It's
It's
you
no
know how it
fun.
is.
It's no
Yeah.
fun.
No. No.
Well, tell me a little bit about working on some of these huge shows that you were on, like Fresh Off the Boat. Tell me about that.
I mean, it was Fresh Off the Boat was a really crazy one for me because obviously that's like the main thing I've done. I did 70 episodes of that. It was on for 6 seasons, and the main thing for that, I grew up on that show. Like that's what I knew. Like I was like I had my life outside of the show, but then I had my life being Trent. Like because
Hmm.
it went on for so long, and I evolved in the show. I had different like things. Like when I first started, I was like not friends with Eddie, and then I became friends with Eddie, and then like it just kept evolving in the show, and it was like it was a part of me. It was a big part of like who I was, you know.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was definitely a great opportunity, great thing to be on. I mean, I'm very proud of it, and I look back on those days, and I'm like, I can't believe it sometimes because like I look back and I'm like, that was me. Like that's crazy, right?
It is pretty wild for a show to be on a show that has, lasted that long to really be able to go back and see so many of your pivotal childhood years play out and just be able
Yeah,
to rewatch it whenever you want.
exactly. And you just think about like all the little behind the scenes things that nobody sees, but you know like what happened, like how they filmed it, like funny little things in the episode when you were filming it, like all the little things that come back to you is the main thing.
Mm. Um, what about working on True Detective? I mean, that's a crazy show. How was that for you as a kid?
That was a crazy show. That's a great way to put it. Um, but that was actually really cool. I have an audition story for that. We'll get into that in a little bit, but Colin Farrell was an absolute gem of a person to work with. He's an amazing person. I don't know how people see him on the internet, but he is a lovely person. If you guys aren't familiar with my role in the show, I was his son, and in the show, he's a detective, and he had to be really like mean to me in the show. But after every single scene, he would always be like, "Hey, like, are you okay?" Like, because it was pretty intense. It's an intense show, and for like a young kid working on that, but he was always very like, are you okay? Like, he was a very good guy.
I love that so much. I
Yeah,
I think it's so important, especially when you're dealing with, intense subject matter with a minor. It's so, I don't know, I just feel like some people kind of just pass it off and they're like, all right, let's just go to the next scene or let's just do the next tape, blah, blah, blah. But it's really cool to hear somebody like Colin Farrell, who's been in the industry for forever and is such an icon, really like take that into account and understand what it was, must have been like for you.
right, exactly. Because he doesn't know what's going through my young mind at that time.
No.
So, but that was really impressive. He impressed me a lot. He was one of the guys that I worked with that I was like, wow, he's how everybody should be, like
Mm,
an icon, as you said.
total icon. I
Yeah.
adore him. What did you have, any sort of process as a kid to kind of let that go, leave it at the set, or how did you deal with it?
I wouldn't say I had a specific process, honestly. I think that I understood that it was work. I understood that I was going to work, and like I had my time at work where I had to be very professional, and then I had my time outside of work where I could be like myself and be, a kid. And I think that I had a very good balance of that, and I think I can thank my parents a lot for that because they weren't like, "Hey, you have to like do all this and this and this." They're like, "You have to be professional," which is a big thing for a child actor. And I was like, okay, like be professional. I'm gonna learn my lines. I'm gonna show up and do what I have to do, and then when I get to leave, I get to go, do whatever I want. And I'm gonna go to work as people do, and then after work, I'm gonna go do what I want.
Yeah. I have to say, I have to give credit majorly to your mom. I love your mom so much, and I know that our moms talk all the time still. Um,
Yes,
she and my mom, they remind me of each other in the sense of like they're so grounded, and they both did such a good job of saying like, you want to do this? Great, you can do this, but we're gonna be normal humans.
exactly, exactly. I love my mom so much, and I can thank her for everything she's done. I mean, she's been an absolute amazing mom, and I think that the way you put it, very grounded, like not like forcing, not like anything like that. Hey, you want to do this? You don't want to do this? Hey, that's fine.
Hmm.
And definitely a great way you put it.
Yeah, she recently sent, or I guess it wasn't recent anymore. I don't know. Time doesn't really exist in my brain, but she sent me. It's an old theater magazine that she found, and she was like, "Do you think?" She asked my mom. She's like, "Do you think that Jillian would want this?" And I was like, "Yes." And I still have it.
Uh,
It's like perfectly preserved. It's from like the 1920s. I'm like, "What? This is incredible."
that sounds like my mom. She's always got something random going on. It's just like you never know.
It's so cool. Well, let's talk a little bit about. I mean, we kind of talked about it before we started recording, but I'd love to, get your input on this. Is a lot of people don't understand the major transition that takes place when you've been a child actor and then going into your adult years, and kind of what that not only mentally does for you, but the actual struggle that it is reestablishing yourself. And I'd love to know what your process has been, and what you found is working and not working.
Definitely. I think the way you put a struggle, it's a lot different. It's the child acting world versus the adult acting world is completely two separate things, and not a lot of people understand that.
Hmm.
And the best way for me that I've experienced it recently, I'm 20 now. I got in the industry when I was 6, so I've seen a lot of change in myself, a lot of change in the way that people treat me. When I go to auditions or when I work, people start respecting you more in the industry. But there's also more expected of you when you get older, and I think that that's a really big thing. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think that's just a thing that happens. You get older, people start expecting more from you. Um, but for me, I think the way that I've changed, not just in the aging department, but I've lost a lot of weight. Like I've kind of rebranded myself as like who I am as a person outside of acting. So kind of like having to do that, and then also that affecting the acting world for me.
Mm.
I think that that's been the biggest thing for me. And I think just rebranding myself as not like the funny like big fat kid anymore. It's just like a man. Like I'm acting as like a man now.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I mean, when I became an adult, my agents and managers were all kind of like, "Yeah, everything that you did as a kid, you just throw that out. Like you're basically starting over."
Yeah, exactly.
And I was like, "What do you mean? I put in all this work. What do you mean?" But
Exactly.
it really is. You have to kind of find your voice, and how you want to be represented now to the world.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. Whoever told you that, like I completely agree. You have to just it's like two different lives. You
Yeah.
start your acting life as a child actor, and then your acting life as a child actor dies when you become a certain age, and then you have to start your new life as an adult actor.
Hmm.
And that's something that I just recently learned too. Like kind of the same like realization you had. It's like what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like I did all this stuff, like I was this person, this person, this person, now I have to forget that? I don't want to do that. But you have to, and that's a part of growth, and that's a part of the industry, and it's normal.
Yeah. What has been like the way for you to kind of navigate finding yourself as an adult? Have you done classes? What's been like the biggest influence on you?
As far as like in the acting world or just in general life.
I'd say both, because I think, especially for people who are listening to this who may be taking this transition as well, I think it's important for us to talk about, being a full human outside of acting as
Definitely,
well.
definitely. Yeah. Well, as far as my life outside of acting, I think that just getting better habits and getting like building good habits and building myself up, and not super like dead focused on like acting, like I need to do this, this, and this, and I need to focus on this. Like no, I have other hobbies and I have other like professions that I do, and like although I'm not saying like I don't prioritize acting, but I think that's the main thing. You have to build yourself up in other categories too. You can't have like one specific thing that you like have all your eggs in the basket. And that's been the main thing for me is I have a lot of like I'm in a lot of different places mentally, like as far as like doing things. Like I love to golf, I love to go to the gym, I work out every day. I try to eat as healthy as I can, and I have an investment company with my mom where we like work on properties together, and it's like there's a lot of good things that like I do outside of acting. So acting is just like one added benefit that is obviously a big part of my life and has been for like my whole life, but it's not like the sole thing that I'm like, oh, if I don't get like this job this time, I'm gonna like freak out, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, you have to have that balance in this industry, otherwise you'll
Oh
absolutely
yeah,
drive yourself insane.
yeah, yeah. Not many people understand that. People think, because in life, I mean, you put work in, you put effort in, and you expect results, but acting is unforgiving. Like, you could put all the effort in, you could do everything right, and sometimes you just won't get a role, you won't get a call back, and it is what it is. And that's something that is just hard about that industry.
hmm yeah, because 90% of the time it has nothing to do with you, how good
Yeah,
you are. It's all about what's in, the producer's head, the director's head, and it's not anything to do with us,
yeah, exactly, exactly.
which is so hard to get through your
And
brain.
it's hard to like take that in and be like okay with that, but you have to be.
hmm You
Yeah.
have to be. Um, are you? Have you done like any sort of like classes lately that you found beneficial, or have you found like a way to break things down that works for you now as an adult actor when you're doing auditions?
Mainly, well, ever since I've been young, I've worked with my mom a lot, and my acting coach, Bo Kane. He's been with me this whole time, and anytime there's like a big role that I have, like I'll still go back to him. So,
Mm,
and he's been in the industry forever, and my mom, she's always been there for me, and she understands like the transition as well. I
yeah.
mean, she's been around it, and mainly just those two people have been very influential on like prepping me or getting me ready for a role or helping me understand like the difference between like, hey, like if you have this role, like you're kind of saying it how you would have like when you were a child actor. Like you're not
Mm,
that anymore. Like you're this person now. Like you're like like you're supposed to be like a handsome guy in like this show. You're not supposed to say this like, oh, I'm the big chunky like funny guy. So
right.
you say like things differently, and I'll catch myself sometimes like still being that person
Mm,
in roles that I'm not supposed to be, and they'll tell me, and I'll fix it obviously, but that's been the main thing, kind of just like understanding that the roles I do now are a lot different than the roles that I did before.
oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah, it's a crazy thought, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's just it's such a crazy thing to try and break down in your brain and kind of just it's almost like you have to retool how you think
Yeah,
about yourself, which is
exactly.
wild.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's wild. Wow. Well, I love to ask people about audition stories, and you mentioned True Detective. So is there an audition story that you would like to share with our listeners?
I do. I have one about True Detective that's a quick one that I just
Okay.
thought was cool, and then I have
Great.
a one that's kind of a more involved story. So for True Detective, obviously, I was young, but I still understood that it was a big role that I was going out for. Like, my mom was like, "Oh my God, Colin Farrell! He's like so handsome and all these things, right?" And I was like, which made me like I would get nervous at auditions, like, but not super nervous. But when things like that happen, I'd be like, okay, this is like super serious. I need to be like as good as I can be. And so I went into the first audition. It went well. Got a call back. Callback went really well. And then for the third audition, I go to the audition. It's like you know how like I don't know if the viewers like know this, but like the first audition's usually at like a like kind of crummy place, or like you
Yeah.
sometimes it'll be at like a random like mini like area. I don't know. I don't know how
Yeah,
to
it's
explain it.
like in shopping malls or something. Like
Exactly. That's the word, shopping mall.
yeah, it's just like in a random office building that the
Yeah.
casting directors found, which whatever, fine. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
usually like not on the lot. It's not anything like professional
No, no,
really.
no. But then when I got to the third audition, I was like, oh wow, this is like a nice like office. Like they sit me down with around like this nice table. They give me like water and stuff. I was like, oh okay, this is nice. So and then they call me in, and then Colin Farrell is sitting right there in the corner with the director and the writer of True Detective, and I was like, oh okay. So it was yeah, that was really cool. And then I was like, we read it together, and obviously they liked me enough, and that was a really cool audition.
I truly can't even fathom doing a chemistry read with Colin Farrell. I think I would pass out.
Yeah, it's good that I didn't like completely like comprehend that when I was
Yeah.
that young.
Yeah.
That's a great thing about being a child actor, because you're like going into it, you're like, okay, I don't know, this guy's whatever, you know.
Well, yeah, especially too with like big things like that, chemistry reads, testings, all of that stuff. There's so many people in the room, and I feel like as an adult, you kind of overthink it all, and you're like, oh my
Mm-hmm.
God, all these people are going to be there. But when you're a kid, you just go and you're like, hi, what are we doing? Great.
Exactly, exactly. When you're an adult, you're like, okay, this might be the producer, that might be the writer, that might
Yeah.
be the director. And but when you're a kid, you're like, oh, there's a person with brown hair, there's a girl over there. You know, it's like
Yeah.
it's all the same.
I love that.
So that was a really cool audition story. And then I have one that I did not get the role of. So this one, so my mom, my sister, and I, we lived in Bakersfield, which is a town. There were a lot of stray dogs. It's kind of a random thing that's there. They have a lot of stray dogs.
Aw.
Yeah, it's pretty sad. We had a lot of like rescue dogs, and we still have one. She's here in the other room. But pretty much, I went on this audition for a Goodwill Hunting with Josh Brolin, and they liked me a lot. They called me back once. They called me back for a third callback, and we were on the way to with these like 10 rescue puppies in this rental car with my sister. We had booked a resort in Reno, Nevada. So we're driving up. We hit Sacramento, and my agent calls my mom, and she's like, "Hey, they want to see you like tomorrow at like 10 a.m." Meanwhile, we're in like Sacramento, driving to Reno at like 10 at night. We have this resort for 3 days in Reno. We're making a trip out of like delivering these puppies to Reno, Nevada.
Oh my God.
And my mom's like, no. My mom's like, we have this like thing. Like, I'm sorry, we can't like come. And eventually, like the agent kept calling. Like we were like, okay, fine, we'll come back. So we get to the resort. We drop the puppies off. Whatever. We park the car. It's like 3 a.m. I'm like exhausted from this drive. I'm like, I go to bed for like 3 hours. We wake up. The freaking valet of the resort didn't even like take our car around. Our car's still sitting out there. So we get all our stuff back down. And it was a really nice resort. I was looking forward to like staying there. Maybe I'll go back one day. But anyways, we leave at like 6 a.m. We're on the way back down. We go to the audition, and he's in there, and like it went well. And we leave. We go down, and there was an ice cream shop down the street. So we get ice cream, and like the agent meanwhile is calling my mom. My mom like had her ringer off. She thought it was like spam or something. She's like, I don't know how you feel, but I don't really answer my phone unless it's like a contact or. I usually don't answer my phone.
I don't.
No.
Unless I know the number, there's no way.
Yeah, it's either got a 310 number or like a contact, or I'm not answering.
100%.
But anyways, we're getting ice cream. Like I'm like, okay, cool. We did this audition. It went well. And the agent was like, she had to call my dad, and my dad called my mom, and she was like, hey, they want you to come right back in. So we go back in there. Yeah, we go back in there. And there's like a bunch of more people that showed up, and like I'm like, okay, how many like auditions am I gonna do? Like this is like the 6th audition, and they were talking about like flying me out to North Carolina to like see how I fit there, or like something like that. And like meanwhile, like we're like, why are there so many people here? You know, like when you go to like a callback, you expect there to be less people.
Yeah. This
is like the 6th callback after we just like did all this stuff, and we're like, oh my gosh. So anyways, I leave, and then they call my mom a few days later. They're like, hey, like we're not going to fly him out to North Carolina. Like we're going to hire somebody locally there. And I was like,
oh my gosh.
That was a bad story. I had the bad one and the good one.
Oh, that's so upsetting. Oh,
I know.
No.
Yeah.
Oh.
No resort, no job.
Wait, what happened to the puppies?
The puppies got dropped off, and the puppies were good. That was a win. The puppies were a win. The ice cream was a win. Those are the 2 wins.
Oh gosh, that's crazy. You know, it's so interesting when productions do that. When it's like they go through all this effort of casting somebody, and then they're like, we're going to hire locally. Which, hey, I love when productions hire locally. I know that you have to a certain amount of people, and I think it's important that they hire local actors. But it's so sad when they do this, where they like put it out as a nationwide casting, and then they're like, actually, we're just going to do this. And you're like, oh, but I put so much work in this. What do you mean?
Right. It's like unethical at a point, but yeah.
True. Very true. Well, thank you for sharing those. Let's talk a little bit about Happy Endings Funeral Parlor and how that came about.
So that is a very fun story and a very fun project that I'm very happy to be a part of. So my family friend is actually the writer of it, Kyle. He he came to my mom with it and he said, "Hey, Trevor, he's an actor. I'd like him to be a part of this." And I was like, I read the script. I thought it's so funny. Right now it's a short, but we're working on doing a full length, and it's a buddy comedy. It's two brothers who work for their uncle's struggling funeral parlor business,
Oh man.
and they just keep messing everything up. They just like they keep messing it up, and he's just can't like deal with it anymore. And it's actually a really impressive cast for being a short. Corbin Burnson, he's in it. It's so funny. I was actually just got back from New York for the screening of it at the Soho Film Festival,
Oh, awesome.
and being able to see it on like that big screen like that was really, really, really impressive. And genuinely, it's one of the things I'm most proud of to be a part of. Definitely.
That's so exciting. So it's hopefully being turned into a feature.
Yes, yes. We're
And
ready. We're ready for the feature.
you're
We
like,
just
let's
need,
go.
yeah, we're ready. Yes.
Whoever's listening, let's do this.
Yes,
Um,
exactly.
is this something that you want to spend more time doing too, like diving into the more production side of things as well?
Definitely, definitely. I've always been so fascinated with how it works, even as a young kid, like being like crafting something, like being a part of like actually building it, like from the ground up. Because I'd always been like, okay, like I'm gonna go do this. I'm gonna be on the show for one day. I'm gonna like say a few things and like leave, be in my trailer, whatever. But like actually being able to like say something about the script or like those kind of things, I feel like that's a big part of becoming an adult actor too. I feel like
Hmm.
transitioning from being a child.
Yeah, is actually being able to have a little bit more of a creative
Yeah,
input.
definitely, definitely.
Is directing ever in your future? Do you see yourself doing that?
I actually, that's another thing that I've always been intrigued on. Like when I was on Fresh Off the Boat for so many times, like all the cameramen there and the director, I'd always be like close with them, and like I feel like I've always been very understanding of how it works, like as far as directing goes and how everything's set up, set setups, and everything like that. And definitely, that's something that's in my thought, in my horizon. It's in like the back pocket of my mind. It's not like at the front, but it's there.
It's there. You'll do it one
It's
day.
there. Definitely.
I mean, I remember on the To the Beat sets, like I feel like you were always there. All first off, there were so many kids on that set.
Oh yeah.
It was so difficult to
Chaotic.
keep my brain on straight. But I feel like you were one of the actors. You're just always there. You're always. It's like you could read our minds. You were like, "Yep, I know I'm going to be here, and I know I'm going to be there." And I was like, "Oh, well, great. Let's just go then."
Thank you, thank you. That means a lot because I do try. I've always tried to be very professional and like understanding of like what people want from me on the set. Like, be like, oh hey, the director's like gonna move the cameras here. I need to like get out of the way, or do something like simple things like that. I feel like is a big part of not only being a child actor but being an actor in general.
100%. I mean, it just shows like how connected you are to the experience, right? And like
Yeah,
knowing not only like where you should be, but just I don't know. It's so hard to explain, but it definitely is that thing where it's like I always felt that you were one of the actors who was always very connected to like, yeah, I know that I need to be over here now, and I'm just gonna go over here because they're gonna move things, and like it just I felt like I didn't even have to direct you much.
thank you. I really appreciate that. That means a lot.
Yeah. Well, it's been so fun having you here and catching up. Is there anything else that you want to talk about while I got you here?
Um, Mainly, I mean, I'm very excited with the Happy Endings Funeral Parlor. I think that's the main thing that I have working on right now. I mean, working on it a lot. Obviously, traveling to the film festivals and just be on the lookout for that. And obviously, catch up with me on social media and stuff like that. I post every once in a while on TikTok and Instagram. It's just my name, but it has been a very, very nice time catching up with you, and I
Yes.
really appreciate you having me on.
So nice having you, and I can't wait to see the feature of this in
Yes,
production
yes,
very soon. Universe,
yes.
you hear that?
Whoever's listening, yes.